joined today by one of the world's top survival experts. She's an expedition leader, author of Mind of a Survivor, and a key figure behind the scenes of some of the biggest survival shows in the world. She has a deep understanding of persevering in the wild, combined with a unique insight into the human mind, which allows her to help others who work in high-risk and trauma-filled environments. Welcome to the Silvercore podcast, Megan Hine.
That's quite the introduction. Hi, Travis. It's great to be with you. It's a shame we didn't quite manage to do it in person, though, did we? It almost happened just before Christmas.
So close. And you know, I got to be honest. I have wanted to have you on the podcast for a very long time. And when you and I were working on that Fox show, Extracted, together, I thought, oh, this is perfect. You're up in Whistler working on this new show. I'm up there. Surely we're going to be able to make something connect there. Nope. But that was my first experience working on a larger film production. And apparently I misunderstood the time allocation required to work on these things. How was it for you?
Oh, it was brilliant. It was a great experience, and I'd love to hear your side of it as well, because our paths didn't quite cross in the fields. But yeah, for me it was because I was actually on screen on this one, in a role of head of extraction, so going in to rescue people out of the terrain when things happen, which was. I'm usually behind the scenes, and I'm usually involved right from the very start in all the setup and all the pieces of the puzzle and things coming together. So I arrived when the puzzle was pretty much fully formed. So it was quite an unusual experience for me. Whereas I think for yourself, you were involved right at the very start, weren't you?
Well, yes. At an earlier point, I got a phone call from, actually it was Nikki Van Schindel, and she's a past guest. Yeah, she's amazing. Yeah, she was one of my earlier guests here on the podcast, and she and I have a lot in common. Same favorite childhood book, and I actually had a copy of it in here with her when she came in to chat. But she says, Trav, we got this show, and there might be some hunting on here, and the people, they're from California, and they don't know the rules and the laws. Can you kind of point them in the right direction? I said, sure, no problem. So I introduced them to some of my contacts in government and the people who they need to talk to. And they come to me and they say, well, I think we need to get all of our contestants licensed. Okay, sure, that's something we do. Yeah, we can put a course on for you, not a problem. Says, but there's a catch. They got to come in one at a time. They can't see each other. They can't do it in a group. I'm like, holy crow, this is going to make things interesting. So I said, tell you what, in the interest of expediency and in the interest of getting this done for you, why don't they do BC's online course, which my company made? Why don't you do BC's online course, and then we'll go through one at a time, and they can challenge the test afterwards. And they would take them down, some of them blindfolded, some of them they're taken through the hallways. And yeah, that was a different experience, because when you're talking to these people, of course, the production company doesn't tell me anything. They won't tell me the name of the show. We're not allowed to say anything to the contestants. And so the contestants are coming in and they're saying things to me like, oh, when my dad comes through, you're going to like him. I'm like, I don't see your dad on the list here, but okay. I'm trying to piece things together. Finally, I just gave in, and I called up a buddy of mine who works in transport, and I said, what show am I working on? What's going on? and he knew everything. So
they're mad. These big shows are absolutely crazy, because there's so many facets that go into making up a show like this. And it's I think the viewer doesn't always appreciate actually just the logistics and all the permitting and things that go into it. Because I've been working in the industry now for almost 20 years, and it's changed so much. It's when I first started, it was kind of full on cowboy style. You go in there, you did whatever you wanted, permits and things weren't such a big issue, budgets were bigger, timeframes were longer, and it was just, you just go out into these environments and just have a laugh and just figure it out on the fly and kind of wing it. Whereas now, every single aspect of it, you're saying, from the hunting through to the technology, through every single aspect of it is just so well thought out and so prepared. And it's just insane that you get these large numbers of people that come together. 'Cause I think on this show there was over 300 people people involved. You
Whoa.
get all these people that come together and are like never met. A lot of them never met before, never worked together. Come together, make this magic, and then disappear off again, never to come back together. It's
I
insane.
know. Oh, I look at it, I'm like, I don't know how you guys are going to do this. I'm listening behind the scenes. They're like, oh, we have to do swim testing. They're going to be out of the lake, and they got to do and all these different testing features, and they have to take them one at a time, test them individually, have the oversight. I'm like, I don't know if you're going to be able to pull this off in time, but it'll be interesting to see what you do. And sure enough, they do, and it all comes together in the end.
Every single time. It's like I've been doing some really big shows actually the past 4 or 5 years. I used to do like a lot more expeditions, super remote, kind of very agile shows, but somehow I ended up doing these like big adventure sort of competition shows, and it's like every single one I've worked on, it's like you come aboard and just like, there is absolutely no way that we're going to be able to pull this off in like the weeks or the couple of months that we've got here. And every time like we manage to do it, which doesn't really help our case, because it means that like the next time they're just like, no, so you pulled it off, you don't need any more time, you can have less time and less budget.
Oh, totally. Yeah, typical union environment type mentality, right?
Yes.
So how did you get into this? You've been doing this for over 20 years now. How did this all get rolling?
So I guess going back to like childhood, and my dad was originally a geologist and did a lot of expeditions. This is way before I was born. Did a lot of expeditions, loved rocks. So all our family holidays were to go and look at rocks, get up close and personal. He did a lot of climbing, so we did a lot of climbing. So it was like touching the rocks, digging the rocks out, hunting for fossils, going out camping with my parents and out in the mountains. Like typically around the UK, I'm British. I'm from North Wales, and so a lot of our family holidays were into the mountains in the UK and exploring. And I never knew that there was a career outside of academia. And I guess because I was the oldest of 4, it was just assumed that I would follow in my parents' footsteps and go into teaching or doctoring or something, get a proper job. Like, and it just kind of never really happened. I had a place to go into the military, but I thought I'll take a year out after I finished school. I had this place to go into officer training in the UK. I thought I'd take a year out and go off to New Zealand, which is somewhere I'd always wanted to go to. I think similar to you and Nikki being inspired by a book, I was inspired by this book called The Land of the Long White Cloud, which was given to me by by some cousins that lived in Australia. And it was this beautiful book, illustrated book of like Maori culture and their mythology and folklore. And I just like, I'd hide under the covers at night and read this book. And I just wanted to go to New Zealand. So as soon as I could, I figured I was going to take a year out before going back to the military and go to New Zealand. End up working on South Island. Stroke of fate, luck, in being in the right place at the right time, ended up doing an apprenticeship in bushcraft and survival, and taking people out into the mountains there. And I suddenly realised that there's actually, there's a career in this. So that's kind of where it all started.
And then at some point you were working for a company and they said, "Oh, we want your help on this little known film set. This guy by the name of Mr. Grills." Right?
That small presenter. That was super random. Like, because I was when I came back from New Zealand, I decided I wasn't going to go into the military. I actually ended up doing a degree in outdoor studies, which was basically 3 years of climbing on a student loan. And
cool.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was so much fun. I spent my second year actually out in the Czech Republic. I did an exchange out there.
Oh, I love it out there.
Oh man, it's so wild. And I went out with a friend of mine. We bought this like really shitty old bus, converted the back of it, and we're like living in the back of this in the middle of Prague. And there was like a bit of a language issue, and they weren't really expecting us. They didn't really know what to do with us, so we just fucked off to Austria and went mountaineering for for months.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was such an amazing trip. It was a very formative trip. I ended up falling into like a big crevasse, and we had a bit of an epic. So we thought we should probably at this point go back and actually do some studying. So I went back and ended up doing that's kind of, I suppose, where my interest in like the psychology and philosophy of why people go into the outdoors kind of came from, because they do, although their physical side of things, so like our outdoor adventure pursuit sort of side of lessons were hardcore, like super fucking hardcore, in how they bring that on. But then on the flip side, they had this really beautiful like philosophy, and you'd sit down and you'd talk through why people would go into the outdoors and the psychology behind it and our connection with the natural world, which was something I'd never really kind of thought about before. And I came back to the UK and ended up doing an apprenticeship, a 3-year apprenticeship in bushcraft and survival. I'd kind of picked up my sort of British mountaineering qualifications, climbing qualifications as well. And I guess I was just in this really kind of unique position that I'd got this sort of random collection of qualifications and experience. I'd started leading expeditions out to the Himalaya. This was like in my early 20s. As well, and just this combination. At some point I was working for a company that had just taken on the consultancy for Bear Grylls' Man vs. Wild, like his Bear Grylls' original shows, the ones that made him really big. And I think the first season, like it had just been a bunch of guys having a laugh out in the field, and there was like stories of bear suits and with antlers, like and all this stuff just like got out into the press because nobody knew how big it was going to be. It was
Right.
no. Yeah. So like, right, okay, second season, we need to lock this down and we need to do this properly. So we'll bring in a team. So I was actually hired originally to rig the stunts, so build, like design and build the rigging challenges. And I went along and joined. The first show that I ever did was the only ever urban show he did. We were filming in Poland, in Gdansk, in the dockyard there, which was just nuts. And then I just kind of stuck as part of the team, and was part of his team in between working on other shows and expeditions for the next sort of 14 years.
Well, I met him a number of years ago, and what did he say to me? He says, they should call me Bear. I'm 6'6", 250 pounds, big beard. Standing beside him, like the TV makes the perspective off, but he's a small guy. Some of the toughest people I know are just these diminutive, small people. They can less injuries, less weight to lug around, and that mindset as well. The mindset is huge for the toughness. But he says something about you. He says, 99% of the people out there, you are tougher than 99% of the 99% of the men he knows, but 99% of the people out there, you're tougher than. That was kind of a neat compliment.
That was an awesome compliment. Yeah, that was really cool. And I think that's something like with Bear is that he's very loyal to his team, and that's how he and his shows have been so successful, because they're really agile shows. So when it got to the sort of the Running Wilds that we did, and I did like 6 full seasons of the Running Wilds, which is where he's going out and he's accompanied by usually a major celebrity or politician as a guest. And there's all this stuff about it being fake and all of this, and like it isn't. It's like we genuinely, at the start of the day, the cameras switch on and they don't switch off until they're tucked up in their shelters. And the journey's linear, so they're constantly moving through the environment. The guest, is genuinely on a journey with Bear, and as a crew, we're having to adapt to that. So often I'm, attached to. I've got a camera operator attached to me. I usually work with like the main camera operator, so that I can then move my safety team around the terrain, and I've got a good visual on where everybody is. And then we're moving through the terrain with him and his guest, and it's very agile, very dynamic, very real risks, and super exciting though.
Well, one of the things I think appeals to the audience, and probably appeals, I'm going to put myself out there and guess it probably appeals to you, is the psychology of the individuals when they go out into the wild. And they have a formulaic approach to the Bear Grylls shows as they go through, because it works, where they take somebody out, they push their boundaries, there's a shared adversity, there's a time to debrief over a cup of tea, and the insights that people share in these moments is really, really cool. you talk about the psychology behind why people go outside. Why do people go outside?
Well, I think that there's so many different levels to this and layers to it. But on a very fundamental level, it's our natural habitat. I'm a true believer in the fact that we haven't evolved to live in this modern world. Like, we have adapted, we haven't necessarily evolved, and we're incredible at adaptation. Like, that's what defines us as a species. We're absolutely phenomenal at adapting to new environments, new situations, new scenarios. But it doesn't mean that we like it or our brains can cope with it. And we look around at the modern world around us and the fast pace it moves at, and we look at our like primitive survival mechanisms that are built in us to keep us safe, that are in all animals. The limbic system, that fight, flight, freeze response that like lives within our brain. And it's like it's incredibly powerful, and its primary role is to keep us safe. So it's constantly scanning the environment around us, looking for threat. And that was at a time when we had predators like saber-toothed tigers or bear that would have been hunting us potentially, as we were quite vulnerable without our without any fur and claws and big teeth and things. But then we've then created this modern world very, very fast, and the brain, that part of the brain, that survival part of the brain, can't differentiate between real versus perceived threat. And seeing triggering posts on social media triggers us in the same way, as in the same flood of chemicals as if that saber-toothed tiger was stalking us. So I think for us, actually just going back into nature, and I think this is where social media, I'd be interested to hear your view on this, but I think there's a social media move of like extreme adventuring, like going up Everest, going to the South Pole, going on these like massive expeditions that is the minority of people or adventurers going and doing these things. And there's a big push that that's what we should be doing on adventure, but that's not where like the power of nature for healing, the therapeutic applications come in. It's like literally going in your lunch break and sitting in the local park, or going for a walk in the woods with your kids and reconnecting with this natural world around us that is very much a part of who we are.
Yeah, I believe that. I guess the idea behind social media pushing these extreme adventures is that it has to show something that'll break a person out of their scroll, something that'll be eye-catching enough, or adrenaline kind of dopamine fixing enough so that they actually stop and they look at it. But like for me, going out in the wild, I need to get outside. I need to be just by water. You talk about listening to the birds. I am a big believer of listening to the birds, of just being present. Every day I try to find ways to deepen my connection with the natural environment. And I find if I don't, because, I'm going to throw this back at you, because the world that we live in, having to post stuff on social media, having to work in these Hollywood realms with people who are a lot of type A personalities, a lot of energy, a lot of people who may have never really spent much time in the outdoors. I find that it can be rather trying, because if your external environment doesn't match your internal environment, there's going to be stress associated with that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think because it's a good point you make about this, or the feeling to ever need to be upping our social media game or upping the way that we present ourselves. And I think this is where actually, having been a part of this evolution of adventure filmmaking to the point of where it is now, having watched that journey, and actually sometimes I wonder if what we've done is actually not that positive, because the media needs to sensationalize things, to, as you're saying, to grab people's attention. You need to sensationalize stuff. And what we're doing when I'm putting together a journey for a TV show, looking for locations, looking for stories, we're looking to trigger emotions in people because that's what gets people hooked. And it is far easier to trigger fear and anxiety in people than it is joy and happiness, because of that primitive survival mechanism. It's so easy to trigger that and to make people feel fear or anxiety, or to empathize with what that person or character on screen is going through, than it is to trigger sort of joy and happiness in other people, which is really sad. It's like, what?
Yeah.
So this is like, even myself, I find myself, you do the doom scrolling and you're stuck in this like this social media hole, and you forget. And it's like, even working in the industry and knowing how manipulative it is, and knowing how much sort of research goes into creating addictive actions goes into it. It's even then, it's like you get caught into this because our brains just respond
so
to it.
easy.
Yeah, it's scary.
Yeah. Well, what do you do to keep yourself centered? Like, you've talked about burnout before. What do you do to deal with burnout, to deal with everyday stresses? I mean, you're dealing in high risk environments. There's a lot of energy coming in. What do you do to help work this through if you can't get outside, or if you can get outside? What's your secret?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question. And just pre-COVID, actually, because I think for me personally, like, COVID came at a good time, like all this kind of lockdown, personally, because leading up to, I'd just been diagnosed with burnout. And I think because I'd spent sort of over a decade really full time out on the road. At the time, myself and my partner, we'd been together for a long time. We were doing the same work, so we didn't really need to go home and reconnect at home. So we were just constantly on the road for sort of 10, 11 months of the year, constantly bouncing time zones, environments. Just before COVID, I was managing projects in the jungle. And, so I'd have a job going in South America, job going in China, be bouncing between those time zones, typically international cruise. So you're on like Zoom calls, you're on meetings all hours of the day and night, and managing multiple projects. And these are all quite high risk, high stress jobs with an inherent risk, when you're out working in these environments with a lot of moving parts of helicopters and boats and people. To be switched on all the time, and then inevitably there's like the level of sort of a layer of politics as well that gets involved as soon as you start dealing with sort of mega celebrities.
Yes.
And that for me is like the straw that breaks the back.
Yes.
It's too complex for my brain to want to deal with, and I just want to do my job. So yeah, just pre-COVID, I think it's just accumulation of many years and not really understanding the need to rest, and also the fear when you're a freelancer and working in these environments. As much as I'm addicted to it, I love it, and that was what was driving me. There's also this underlying fear of, if you take your foot off the pedal, is somebody else going to get in there and take over?
Right.
So I was diagnosed with burnout, and around this time I actually started wearing a Whoop device, like one of the wearables, sort of measuring what's ticking along underneath the surface and what's going on with my physiology, and my HRV, so my heart rate variability, was insanely low. So it was sitting like on average around 10.
Whoa.
I know it is nuts, because I was like, super fit, like really physical job, because managing people, but also like rigging. So it's like, wandering, like going into the mountains every day with like 20 kilogram rigging bags, and like, running around in these environments, like, super physical. But my heart rate variability was insanely low, and it's taken like 4 or 5 years for it to get back up. And actually, when you see the numbers and you see just how slow it is to come back up, I think that burnout isn't talked about enough. And unfortunately, those of us that are most likely prone to it are the ones that are not going to listen to the advice anyway, because of course it's never going to happen to me.
Never. Well, what does a burnout diagnosis look like? Like, I don't know too many people who would be able to recognize that in themselves if they have burnout. What does it look like?
Yeah, it's really hard to because it's so insidious. It comes on so slowly. It kind of creeps onto you. And it starts off usually with feeling quite tired, and just feeling like you can't. You're just kind of hanging in there, like you're surviving, and it's like you're able to function, and it's like you just kind of keep going. It's almost you're on autopilot. It's like a really weird feeling, and I think what triggered me to kind of go and talk to a medical professional, a doctor, was that I spent 3 months out in Norway on a job. And I came off the back of it, and I was like, I actually can't remember like anything about this shoot. Like I've literally just come off the shoot, and I cannot remember.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it was just like, am I going mad? Like, what the heck? Like, this is insane. Like, so so I went to speak to a doctor, and I was quite emotional at the time around it as well. And you just kind of like, you feel like you're losing your shit. Like it's kind of like things are unraveling, and you don't know why, and there's no sort of rhyme or reason. But then when you like look at the pattern and like how long, the behaviors and things, and I don't think we appreciate like the effects of time zone travel, and
I could see that.
Yeah. So all of that I think kind of led to it, and definitely just feeling out of sorts.
Well, just prior to COVID, so that'd be around September 2019, you had a post on social media that says, in the end, we only regret the chances we didn't take, the relationships we were too afraid to embark on, and the decisions we waited too long to make.
Yes. Yeah. It's funny, isn't it, when you read social media in like hindsight and just like,
I know.
That's what they were talking about. Yeah, I dread to read any other like messages from that period. It'd be like,
that's right. Especially if you couldn't remember something after doing a shoot in Norway, you just get back from that.
Goodness. Yeah, I mean that was quite scary actually. It's like coming off the back of that and just being like people asking you questions about it and just being like, I actually don't remember any of this. Like this is really, really bizarre. Yeah. So I think COVID came at a good time for me. Otherwise, I think I would have found it very hard to stop. So yeah, it was just good to recuperate, and during over that period of time, kind of realizing how unhealthy like the working schedule that I had was.
So you've been vocal about ADD. You've got ADD. At a young age, grade 3, I was diagnosed with severe ADHD. I was medicated. I was on an experimental run in the province of BC for the highest dosage of Ritalin being prescribed to someone. They just kept upping it more and more just to see what the effects would be like and what it would do, until I finally took myself off cold turkey at the end of grade 7. I said I didn't want to go into high school taking these smart pills, as other people would call them. And I got to imagine that the ADD, ADHD is going to play a role in this burnout as well, too.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it really does. And for me, the diagnosis of ADD actually came more recently. So that was maybe 4 years ago.
Oh, really?
So it wasn't that long ago. And this is what's really interesting, because I've done a lot of reading since that, and understanding that how there's so many women that I suppose sort of get to sort of my age and get diagnosed either because their children have been diagnosed with it and they recognize the symptoms in their child and themselves, or they've the information's percolated into them to be like, oh, light bulb moment.
Right.
I think for a lot of girls, ADHD, ADD presents differently to boys, whereas boys tend to externalize the symptoms. Not always, this is generalization, but tend to externalize in that kind of not being able to sit still, that fidgeting, maybe being seen as a bit naughty in class. Yeah. Whereas like for girls, often it tends to internalize and manifests as depression, anxiety. The focus is very internal, and like this internal narrative that can lead to depressive thoughts. For me, when I look back on it, it's like in school, So like I used to just skip classes to go mountain biking, and I really struggled to sit still, and I couldn't understand why, because it wasn't like I wasn't achieving, like my grades were okay, but I just couldn't sit still. I couldn't focus. I'd be within four walls. I'd just be so anxious. It's like this feeling in my chest of like panic and need to be moving, need to be escaping, and I'd play up and get sent out of classes. And
I
yeah,
can
it was
I can
kind of
relate to
funny.
that.
Yeah, it's horrible, isn't it? It's just like we're just not designed to sit still like that.
Well, it's horrible when you're forced to be in an environment that you're not designed to be in, like you say. That's the horrible part. When you look at yourself and you say, there's something wrong with me. Why can't I concentrate? Why can't I study? Like, I remember in grade 4, I had a teacher who I took a different approach with me. And he says, well, you like puzzles and you like games? Here, do puzzles. You like chemistry? Bring in your chemistry set. And I had my college level chemistry books. And for me, chemistry was making disappearing ink or making things blow up. I mean, if it does something that you can see an exact result out of, that's exciting, right? And I got straight A's in grade 4. By grade 7, I got straight F's. So my teacher took me aside at the end of the year, and I looked at my report card. It says pass, but the grades didn't come up enough from straight F's to really make sense to me. Like, is this a pass? Is this not a pass? And she says, well, technically it's not a pass, but I don't want to see you back in the classroom again. I think you're going to get more out of high school than I'm ever going to be able to give you. You're going. So, and growing up, I always looked at ADHD as a male thing, because all of the literature, the doctors are like, oh, girls don't get ADHD, which is ludicrous. Like, why would girls not get it? And I didn't realize how it presents in girls is more internalized and depressive
Yeah.
thoughts.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because it's that same. If you think about like the same energy that like a little boy is going to be putting out into the world with ADHD, that same energy for a girl is typically put inside. And where else is it going to go into like these kind of weird thought patterns or unhealthy thought patterns?
So
Yeah.
you've got a background in psychology. If I were to put on my pseudo psychologist hat, having zero background in psychology, I'm wondering if perhaps your desire to be outside and be in these extreme environments was an attempt at being present. Because when you're thinking about where your next handhold or foothold is going to be on the rock, when you're thinking about when you're rafting down the river, like where's the hole, where's the strainers and the keepers, and when your head is right there in the moment, it allows your external environment to kind of maybe match your internal environment. Is that an accurate assessment?
I think that's a very accurate assessment. I think there's two parts of it. I think you're right in that it is finding the present, but it was also in running away. It's like I've made a career of running away, and it's like running away from that anxiety, because it's like if you can pedal fast enough or push yourself hard enough, you can outrun the anxiety. And then the climbing, the rock climbing. For me, like I actually wrote when I was at university, I actually wrote my dissertation on flow in rock climbers, and it's like where you find, and I'm sure a lot of like people outdoors folk will have had this experience at some time or another, and for some of you may be super lucky to experience it a lot, but it's this kind of moment where it's almost like you're not thinking, your body and mind are so connected, and it's like you're flowing up the rock face, or you're flowing through along the trails if you're running. I'd imagine it's something that you experience a lot when hunting as well, and you're just so in tune with the environment. It's the most beautiful thing to be in, and it's just the ultimate being present. And that for me, and like the rock climbing, is beautiful. And I suppose I was chasing that as well as the running away from anxiety or emotions that I didn't have the toolkit to be able to deal with when I was younger.
Well, when I was younger, my parents said they didn't think I'd live past 10 years old. And then they said, well, you made it to 10, maybe 12, 12, maybe 18. Now you're an adult. Well, maybe you're going to make it, right? And because I was just bouncing off the walls everywhere. And I was always doing things that were putting myself in physical risk. And, I almost died a number of times, and through my teenage years and early 20s, almost drowned. 3 different occasions I've almost drowned. Um, had and the one thing I found, though, was you never truly feel as alive as when you almost die, right? When you're on that edge, and it's like it could go this way, it could go that way, and you get through, and you're riding this high, and you feel great, but it can cause you to keep pushing more and more for those environments. It's kind of like, and I liken it to cliff jumping. Okay, so I jumped off from this height. Can I go higher? Okay, now I've done it from here. Can I go higher? Like, at what point do we stop? And I'm wondering, so you had quite the experience in that crevasse. That was a life-threatening situation, was it?
That was kind of what prompted us to go back to university and do some studying. But yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you with that. I think, and whether that's an ADD, ADHD thing, or whether it's a personality type or childhood experiences, or whatever it might be, there is, for many of us, there is that feeling of feeling alive when you're confronted or when the consequences are so strong. And this is going back to what we were talking about earlier about like that fight, flight, freeze response and the stress response, and whether we've evolved to live as we do now. There's so few times really in the modern world, in the Western world, where we have to take responsibility for our own actions. It's very easy. There's a blame culture. You see that in like the suing culture and
Yes.
things. Yeah, and constantly passing the buck onto somebody else. Whereas when you go out into the outdoors, whether you're hunting, whether you're running, whether you're climbing, you have to take ownership of your actions, and that responsibility is really empowering. And I think that's where a lot of this comes down to as well, as you actually feel alive because you actually have to engage in your life.
I agree. Do you hunt?
I spearfish. I would love to hunt. I live in the
I
UK.
love spearfishing.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my mindfulness. So I live on the coast in North Wales.
Okay.
It's often out here.
And you spearfish out in North Wales?
Yep. Yeah.
That
We've
is
got
so cool.
bass and mullet.
That is so cool. Yeah, I recently learned that if I put a little bit of silicone on my mask and can create a seal for my my beard, mustache here, and I can actually. Used to be I'd just shave it all off anytime I went into the South Pacific or places I wanted to spearfish, and I will just take I'll find a chunk of bamboo and some surgical tubing and some paracord, and maybe if I'm able to find a stinger head or travel with a little stinger head, I'll wrap that on there, and I use like a Hawaiian sling. I'll make up.
Yeah.
Are you using a spear gun or like a sling or?
Yeah, I do have a Hawaiian sling. I don't tend to use it here, but because I work quite a lot in Panama at the moment, so I've got a Hawaiian sling that packs down, and I take that with me. But I've got a spear gun. I usually go out with a spear gun here.
I find for me growing up, I always wanted to hunt, and I didn't really get out. I spent a lot of time outdoors. We had a commercial fly fishing lodge in an area just past Kamloops up in here in British Columbia, and it was a hike in or fly in only sort of thing. So you could get a helicopter in, and there's about 5,000 elevation, so you could land a float plane, but there's speculation whether at that altitude you could take off again, or you're hiking all your gear in. So as a kid, I'm going to do air brackets. I would hunt, and I had no idea about what was allowed or not, but squirrels and grouse and stuff like this. But the ability to be present and all the little things that come in and how the animals interact with the flora and each other just becomes a study. I find when I'm out there, what's growing, do we see spruce tips kind of coming out here? Okay, so that tells me an idea as to where my elevation is, and it gives me an idea as to what kind of animals are going to be out this time of the year. And for me, it's not about the actual act of harvesting the animal. That just happens to put some food in the freezer, but it's all of that time up preparing for the hunt, packing, getting everything together, training ahead of time, then being outside and trying to, as quickly as possible, become one with nature. For me, that's what hunting's about.
Yeah, it's magic. I'm so jealous of Canadians and like your amazing wilderness. You've got the most amazing backyard to go and play in. But I totally agree with you about that. When going spearfishing, that's exactly what it is. That because you've got this one breath to go
Yes.
down and understand the animal behaviour, have a look, see any idea, any signs in the environment of of the fish that you're looking for. And yeah, it's just magic, and it's just like that feeling. Yeah, but yeah, like you, it's not about shooting the animal. That's not for me. That's actually, I find that incredibly difficult, which I'm glad about actually, because then you have the respect for where your food comes from.
Huge.
Yeah, but as you say, like the lead up to it is just incredible. It's something really primal. It's what we've been programmed for.
It is. And, if I'm going to eat meat, I should be able to square myself with the idea that at some point the animal has to die. And if I put that onto a third party and I kind of divorce myself from the concept of where that food comes from, I find there's a much more intimate connection when I sit around the table with my family and we're eating a meal and we're talking about the time that we spent together outdoors. I mean, it's a very, very close connection that I find, that whole closed circle with the natural environment. I'm curious as to your thoughts on medication for something like ADD, ADHD.
It's really interesting thought actually, because this is something that excuse me, this I've been thinking about actually a lot recently, because I suppose like 18 months ago, I made more of a shift into focusing on building up my company, and developing show ideas, and there's a couple of projects that we've got that are in development at the moment, which are really, really exciting. And oh my gosh, if like one of them comes off, it's going to be insane. I'm just really excited. I feel very passionate about these things, but the problem I have that I've never experienced before, and I think you mentioned like the ADHD is like a superpower, and I
Yeah.
completely agree with this, because it's allowed me to do my job, and it's like in a field where there are so many moving parts like all the time when we're working, when we're filming, and it's like all the different aspects and that my role covers, and I'm involved in every department. I know what's happening where everybody is. And my brain works so well like that when I've got this big overview of what's happening. But when I've been more recently, trying to focus on sitting behind my computer and creating spreadsheets and things,
Oh, yeah.
and it is a horrible feeling, because it's just this, like, again, it's going back to that sort of childhood sitting in between four walls and this sheer panic that starts arising, and just like trying to like keep myself here, and just like I just want to go. So I'm trying to figure the best balance of that, to try to actually figure out, and that's where I was actually would be interested to take medication just to see how it works and how it interacts. Just I'm fascinated. I don't like the idea of it being long term, but I'd just be intrigued to see if it makes a difference.
I think that's the issue with medication, is a lot of them are these long-term, I'm going to go air brackets again, solutions. And when you talk about spreadsheets, for me, ChatGPT has been amazing for helping get the rough work basically done and getting things together. If I throw these things in, I think for somebody with ADHD, it's a huge creativity booster, because then actually see the steps through to the next point. But people ask me, they say, "Well, what do you think? My kid's got ADD, or my kid's been diagnosed with ADHD, or whatever it might be. What are your thoughts on medication?" And just all I can speak from is my experience with the medications that they put me on. And I would say, why are we trying to medicate somebody to be able to fit in a certain environment, as opposed to finding that environment that they can thrive in unmedicated? And
Yeah.
I know that's not always going to be possible if we want to be in a functional society. If you want to be able to get along with other people, maybe the meds can be a helpful thing. But I I always tell people to approach it with a great deal of caution, because once you are on these things, a lot of times the pros will say, "Well, you can't just come off of it. We have to wean you off, or you can put you onto something else, or maybe you're onto it for life." And I would much rather find an environment that I can thrive in with whatever it is that my mindset is or my makeup is, than to force myself to adapt to one that I'm not inclined to fit in with. That would be my thoughts. It might be a little controversial for some, especially for those who um, look at medication as a savior, and I get it. If a person's going through a moment of crisis, maybe this is the right solution for them. But by and large, I say exercise and diet and your environment and your circle of friends and the goals that you have for yourself. All of these things, the hard work things of actually being disciplined and moving towards the progressive realization of a worthy ideal would be um, better than medication.
I think that there's super sound advice, and I think I guess this is why a podcast like this is so powerful, because to be able to for you to be able to talk about your experiences and share it with a wider audience, for people to understand that there may be other options, and that actually just because you have ADHD or you have whatever it might be doesn't mean that you can't be successful in your career, or find your home out there. I think you're right. I think it's sad. I see it a lot on when I used to do a lot more expeditions of people coming along with anxiety and depression and being on medications for that, and choosing to come off of it on these expeditions, not under my talk to your medical providers.
Yes.
But that they were making the decision to come off of it, and actually just being in that environment and connecting with people. Because I think a huge part of our issue with our society at the moment is that we don't physically need to interact with anybody ever. And we've got online ordering. We don't actually have to go out. So much of our world is set up in competition with each other. Whereas when you see work with Indigenous cultures or see how they operate, it's very much as like family units that would go around and help each other out, raise children together, patch up shelters together, forage together. All of these things were communal activities that we've lost that. There's so few of us now actually live near our parents, have that support. Our grandparents become very isolated. And I think this is a huge part of this. It's just like this lack of human connection and working together as tribal units.
Have you seen that Harvard study that would spanned over 80 years, and it looked
God,
at
yes.
right? And what did it say? They were looking at happiness and what makes people happy. What do they say?
Yeah, well, the human connection, being with other people.
That's it. The number one indicator for what if somebody will be happy or not is strong social connections. Having a good friend group, having a good family group, like across all cultures, across all areas of the world, and that is the number one indicator that a person will report feelings of contentment and happiness, is if they have those strong social connections. And in this,
it's really interesting, like seeing that with like the there was a study done on it's like what made people more likely to survive they typically were looking at like wilderness survival situations, but it was like what would make somebody more likely to survive a situation. And there were sort of two main factors to this, but one of them was that connection. Although the family or friends or whoever it might be may not physically be with them, and they may not have any contact with them, but just knowing that they've got this amazing support network behind them was enough to help keep people alive. And the other part of that was like a sense of purpose, found in potentially in routine. But it is interesting, isn't it? It's like we are designed. I think this is why when we look at like COVID, and it's like there's so many. We're still here in the UK, still dealing with the fallout of the sort of mental health fallout from the lockdown that we were experiencing, of people being isolated. And there was all this argument about, well, our grandparents went to war and all of this, and it's like, well, surely they had it worse. Like, why are we dealing with such a big mental health issue at the moment? But huge part of that comes down to the isolation. Yes, it might sound great that you can sit and watch Netflix all day, but it's far more important to actually physically interact, be with people, and talk to people.
I remember as a kid, I was reading, I think it was a National Geographic or a Popular Mechanics. I think maybe it was a Popular Mechanics, but it was an older magazine that was talking about the psychology of survival, and it likened the paradox that when they're looking at people in World War II, and let's say, I think the example was used was a shipwreck, and they're surviving out at sea, and by and large, they figured that all of these young soldiers would be the ones that would out-survive the older ones, but the inverse actually turned out to be true. It was the older ones who looked at the situation and said, well, my first divorce was harder than this, right? Or whatever it might be. They have these learned experiences, and they've got a mindset where they're, I guess, tougher. I find it really, really interesting, mental health and mindset and how that plays into survival.
Yeah. Have you read the book by Joseph Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning?
The one thing you can't take from me is the way I choose to respond to what you do to me. The last of life's great freedoms is one's ability to choose their own attitude in any given circumstance.
It's incredible.
Yes,
it's
it is.
incredible for anybody who hasn't come across this book. He's a psychiatrist that was he was in Auschwitz, and he used that time to be able to study fellow prisoners that were in there. And he writes his book, from a situation that seems so hopeless, and what mankind took out of that situation and how they survived. It's incredibly emotional, but absolutely mind-blowing of just how resilient we are as a species.
Oh, I just find it so crazy and how well that book is written, how well he's been put it together, and how he's able to take an objective view. And he'll admittedly say, I'm trying to be objective here, but I lived through this, and I realize that there's going to be times when these things kind of bleed through. But he would look at people who are all in the exact circumstance, and they're all in the exact situation, and some people have just given up all hope. While other people, they might not be in the best of spirits. Maybe they can crack a smile, and maybe they can tell a joke. Why? What's the difference between one person and the other? And what he boiled it all down to was their ability to choose their own attitude in any given circumstance. And for me, that has been hugely powerful, that my attitude is a choice. If I can wake up grumpy, then I can wake up happy too. Like, that's my choice, right? So, that's a very good book. Is that one that you read through your studies?
Yes, yeah, it was. I just found it fascinating because I was consumed by that question of like, why do some people walk out of a survival situation and almost thrive in that situation, whereas others don't walk out? And often at times it's the people that society would least expect to survive that do. And it's like, well, what's the difference? How come there are these like young children walking out of jungle survival experiences? What's the difference here between, when you think about like a plane crash, between other passengers that may have survived that plane crash? Why did they not walk out as well? It's just, I find it absolutely fascinating, and sort of how you build resilience in people without breaking them.
When you're working on these sets and you're rigging, do you ever find the psychology side start coming through as well, where you're having to deal with different people who you might have to give a pep talk to or put things in perspective too? And if so, do you have examples?
Yes, yeah. So on some of the Running Wilds, actually, like the shows that I was working on, it was like I wasn't actually allowed to interact with some of the participants on it because they'd be looking for me because there was something. It was like they'd say that if you know that you're there, and because you're such a calming presence, that we know that we're safe. And it's like, well, that's not what the producers want out of this.
They want you to feel on the edge.
They want you to be shitting yourself. So but definitely, I mean, it's like you don't know, and it's like with the Running Wilds as well, like with those ones, it's like you're taking people out of their comfort zone. Yes, they might be mega celebrities or major faces of politics, but you're taking them out of their everyday life and you're thrusting them straight into this environment. They've been picked up by helicopter, they've been chucked out into the environment. Typically there's a very short walk and then they're into a rappel or into white water or whatever it might be. And it's like, these are people who are not allowed to do their own stunts usually because it's too expensive to insure them. And it's like suddenly, they've handed over the responsibility for their life and they're in this crazy ass situation. They've got no idea what's coming next. And I've got a huge respect for that. And it's like people going on expeditions as well, the clients that sign up to go on trips. And I think going on an expedition with clients, I try to do one or two a year fitted in around the TV work, just because it's a completely different experience. And I see it as this most amazing thing to be able to accompany people on a journey which they don't know whether they're physically and mentally capable of, and seeing them achieve and actually being part of that roller coaster of emotion and things. It's just incredible, and like just seeing what people can achieve, like summits or jungle treks and survival situations, and seeing them come out the other side, just phenomenal.
Growing up, I always had the mindset, I'm tough. I can do this. I'm tough. I'll keep pushing. I'm in pain. I can push through. I'm tough. I can do it. Right. And the mantra in my head, I can. I'll just keep playing it through. Doesn't matter how cold I am, how wet I am, how injured or how hurt I am. I'll just keep going. And I thought that was, that's how you get tough. And I remember a friend of mine, when he first came back from the British Army, he's been on the podcast before, Jason Budd, and he's a mountain guide now. But we go out in the hills with him, and we're going up. I don't want to complain. My feet are bleeding. They got blisters. And he's like, "Well, hold on a second. Let's just stop. Let's sit down. Let's have a quick brew. Brew up a cup of tea, right? And let's administrate yourself," is what he would say. And that's something that it makes that mental game so much easier when your body's in a position where it's comfortable and relaxed. And I would look at what I was able to accomplish with my tough mindset as opposed to what I was able to accomplish with if I have something slipping on my pack, I stop, I administrate, I get it on. I'm hungry, I sit down, I have some food, have a tea, and I move on. And all of a sudden, we're traveling way further, covering way more ground in a comfortable way than I ever was able to do with this I'm tough attitude.
Do you think that's because you've got a feeling of more control over that situation, because you now can stop and you can sort yourself out?
That's a good point. And I never really looked at it from that perspective. I always just looked at it as, if I'm freezing and I'm cold, but I'll just move faster, right? As opposed to maybe I'll put a jacket on, right? It's in my pack. I'm carrying it anyways, right? Maybe I just put this jacket on.
Oh, we're all guilty of that, though. It's just like,
sure.
Fuck it, just keep going. And then it's like, half an hour later, you're just like, well, that was stupid.
Yeah, exactly. But the mind will go to some dark places when you're right. When you're out there and you're tired and you're cold and you're hungry.
Tripping.
Right. You're stumbling over everything, having a hard time keeping your feet. And I find the second that I sit down and administrate myself, all of a sudden those dark clouds don't look quite as dark. The end goal doesn't seem quite as daunting. And so that was my introduction into the mental role on the physical survival and the physical outcome and performance. And I've become fascinated with that since. Nowhere near at the level where you're at, but this is why I love having conversations with people like you, because I just find it absolutely fascinating.
Well, I think so. The more conversations that you can have, the more it's like you realise that, you know, our brains all do kind of function in the same way, and we all do the same daft things as well.
Yeah, I think so. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that we should be talking about?
That's a good question. I think this is where like the ADHD brain comes in, because it just jumps all over the place. It's
It's huge. Oh, I got a whole bunch of places I can jump.
linear journey. It's awesome. Yeah. I don't know. We've covered some good ground there.
I do. I do think we have. There's also chatting about you working with people in high risk environments, in trauma filled environments. Does that form a large part of what you do?
Oh, as in like resilience building?
Yes.
Yeah. We started doing a bit more of that. So it's working with people and sort of helping build resilience. That was something that that I've been really interested in. I'm an ambassador for the British Scout organisation, and the program that they have running at the moment is what they call Skills for Life, which it recognises that that resilience is built gradually. I think for a long time we've understood that resilience grows through hardship, but if you give somebody too much hardship, it can break them, and actually that's when you end up with PTSD or PTSD. And so what we're trying to do with the younger people is to build up resilience gradually, so encouraging them to expose themselves to lots of different new environments and new situations, new skills. So it doesn't necessarily mean going out and pushing yourself hard outdoors. It's talking to people that you wouldn't normally communicate with, different ages, different backgrounds, different cultures, etc. Going and taking on new skills, and pushing yourself slowly and building up that within a safe space. So I, a couple of years ago, was asked to be involved in looking at resilience in anti-poachers, anti-poaching units, and we built this program, this trial program, which is still running, which is really awesome. Where we went and spent time. So they were doing a 3-month program. These rangers from all over Africa came together, and they do this like sort of train the trainer. They train the guys, and then give them back out into the field, and they go and train their troops. But this resilience program was just like, well, can we use the same sort of psychology as we do in the TV shows in crafting these stories to again trigger that fear and anxiety, to help them understand fear and anxiety and stress and how that affects the system when they are working and living in an environment where they're not going to have access to mental health support. So we were looking at that and like exploring. So we were exploring with them like what fear anxiety is, what stress is, and built a program of like putting more and more stress onto them in a controlled environment, and utilising for that one we were typically using height, when the exposure from that situations, rock climbing, we built a big via ferrata, which is like a big cable system up cliffs, which they could move through, and sort of building up that exposure and talking through it all at each point, in the hope that, and we're still seeing the results coming back, in the hope that if we're running this and helping them understand what stress is, what anxiety is, and the effects it has on the body and the mind, that they can actually learn to control it and have some sort of autonomy over those emotions and the reactions.
That's, you raised a number of good points here. Growing up, I thought it was Conan the Barbarian's quote, but I later realized it was a Nietzsche quote. That which doesn't kill me makes me stronger, right? It's not true, right? It's that which doesn't kill me doesn't necessarily make you stronger unless you've got the ability to cope with it and to understand what you went through and make that into a positive learning experience. Because if you just keep piling on trauma and you keep piling on hardships onto a person, eventually it's going to take its toll. It's like filling up a bucket of water with all of this stuff. We have to find a way to let that kind of come out or deal with it. And you bring up the idea of stories. I think that's pretty cool too. I mean, and when they look at when you look at soldiers coming back from war and PTSD, why are they experiencing PTSD? Why do some soldiers in some wars have a higher rate of PTSD? And again, my layman approach, I don't have any background in this, but if I were to look at it, I'd say maybe it's because of the stories that we tell ourselves or that are being told about us. Like you look at PTSD after the Vietnam War, where soldiers are coming back and society's all against them. Those social groups, which are integral to people feeling happy, according to Harvard, seem to all be against the individual. The individual says, why did I go out there and do this? Whereas in warrior cultures where they come back from a similar war and they're lauded as heroes and they're telling themselves a story, I'm a hero. And they could have done the exact same thing. But it's a story that we tell ourselves, I think, that plays the integral role.
Absolutely. And also going back to the connection point, it's like, it's also the support systems behind people as well, because, there will be members of the military that have gone into military service at a very young age to escape domestic abuse, domestic violence. And it's our childhood narratives play into these, and our ability to be able to cope in situations of stress, and whether our systems have become overloaded, and whether it's sometimes situations that we might be faced with we get triggered because we were triggered, because we experienced these situations when we were younger, and like our formative years, up till like sort of the age of 7, really, and it's like it's really that is such a sensitive time for us in our human development. And it's where our brains and our minds are like acting like sponges and soaking up and basically programming us and programming our reactions for the rest of our lives, which is why when I'm dealing with people that are getting triggered and angry about a certain situation, it's like it's important to kind of take a breath and recognize the fact that you're actually dealing with a toddler because their reactions to whatever the situation is they're probably being triggered as they were when they were a child, because that's when they got programmed to react, and actually trying to switch off your own reaction, because it's very easy, isn't it, when somebody's having a go at you and it's like it's not your fault, you're just like, what the fuck? Like, right, it's so easy to be like, oi, fuck off, and like and then the situation, and then you're both acting in this kind of place of fight flight response, and it's like logic and reasoning is out the window and we can't achieve a goal, whereas actually being able to step back and understanding that this has got nothing to do with me, this is like, this person is obviously upset by this situation here, but actually again it's not this situation here, it's something that happened in their childhood that is causing the reaction now, and they're in the way they interact with the world around them. And I think that's something that we just haven't, although all of this stuff is now sort of being studied a lot more and being understood a lot more, there's still a lot about our minds that isn't understood, and how they interact with what society tells us, our past experiences, our present experiences, etc., and how that all intermingles to create who we are and our reactions to the world around us. I think we've still got a long way to go to help protect military personnel or people who are operating in high stress environments, paramedics, doctors, nurses, etc.
So how do you recognize in yourself that you're becoming overloaded? Are there indicators that you can pick up on?
Yeah, I think this is something where it's like this whole kind of like self-awareness and things. And I know that there's a lot of stuff on social media that makes you think all of this is like really hippie-esque and kind of woo-woo, and it's very easy to dismiss it. But behind all of the pseudoscience and stuff, there is actually there is a real thing here, and actually going back to what you were saying, about being present and recognizing in yourself. So for me, when we're talking about like the sort of the ADHD side of things, and like for me, I know it's like a panic. I feel it in my chest. It's quite a physical feeling that I feel in my chest, and if I start feeling that, I know that the sort of panic's starting to rise in me. And I know that I'm then not going to be operating in my more human brain, which is where logic and reasoning live. I'm going to be operating in the stress response and fight and flight. And it's like when I get an email in, and sometimes because it's very easy to misread or misunderstand, a text message or an email, and it's so easy to read it coming in and just be like, what the fuck, and like want to get back on, like straight back on the email and just like
yes
actually like step in that moment. It's like, I mean, we're all guilty of it, and we all do it. But it's in that moment of recognizing, it's like, hang on a minute, why am I triggered? Like, what is it about this situation that's triggering me? And oftentimes it comes down to your own like self-doubt. And actually, when you step back, it's like it's not actually worded that badly, or if the person was typing it too fast. And
I think
very rarely personal.
I think that's why they made emoticons, because we have gotten so bad at the written language at conveying what we actually mean. We'll type something out with the best intentions, and it comes across to the other person as, why would they say that? But if I put a laughy face at the end, or if I put this emoticon, then they know kind of where I'm at and what I'm feeling.
So passive aggressive emojis. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I find it so easy. And you get an email like that coming in. I just sit on them and I just wait, or a text, I'll just wait. Some places I'll say, like dealing with government bodies, I'll be, excuse me. Dealing with government bodies, I'll say, I respond to my emails on Wednesday. Is this an important matter that needs to be addressed before then, or can I wait till Wednesday? And they'll let me know yes or no. Next Wednesday comes up and I'll say, still working on my response. I'm not ready yet. I'll have to do it next Wednesday. But I've become very disciplined in my approach to how I deal with messages and emails as if they could be read at a later date. I don't know if that's a smart thing to do or if that's overly cautious thing to do, but I always think if somebody coming in and looking at this from a completely outside perspective saw it, what would they have to say? And that's the approach that I typically take with emails.
I think it's very smart. I mean, you see, like, the cases that are in the media at the moment, like the big cases around, it's hard to like not to have seen these things, with Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni, and seeing this case, and it's like all of their messages are just being shared out there. So I'm the same as you now. It's like whenever I send a WhatsApp, whether it's to a friend, to anybody now, it's just assuming that it's going to be forwarded on or shared.
Yes.
And also, I mean, it's sad, isn't it, that we have to get to this stage, but it's, keeping everything right, particularly with, the work that I do where, oftentimes it's like advising in an advisory role. Maybe something's happening that's, I don't think is safe on set, or I don't think that, this isn't going to work, or somebody's going to get hurt, of making sure that it's all like documented in email chains and things. To protect yourself as much as possible. And it's sad that we're at this stage, but it is really important. And I think, again, it's even more important not to get triggered, because otherwise it might come back to haunt you later.
Yeah, there's a real compartmentalization that needs to happen. It's like, okay, I've said my piece. They're going to go ahead with it. I have to make a decision. Do I continue on this show, or do I continue consulting with this person? Do we wrap it up at the end of this one and and I take a different approach. I do consulting for a number of different law firms, and there's some law firms that I'll never consult for again, and I'll just tell them right off the bat if they're looking for an end outcome. And I'm hired as a subject matter expert for the courts, not for you and not for your client. I'm sitting here trying to give the courts the best idea from my perspective as to what's kind of happening. And I got to imagine that's probably a very similar approach when you're consulting on these sets. You're not there for the set. You're there for safety. You're there first and foremost to make sure that people are going to be safe and effective.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there is part of the, I suppose, is looking at like the financial protecting shows,
Yes.
but also protecting the people involved is primary role on that. And yeah, sometimes it is particularly like sort of highly dynamic situations. It can be quite difficult. And what I find as well is that we get a lot of producers maybe coming in from LA or from London, and don't really have a huge amount of outdoor experience, but have been doing these shows and have become a bit desensitized to the fact that we're not in a studio, and just because something hasn't happened doesn't mean that it won't happen. And it's like it's what we call a heuristic trap of like,
Sure.
Nothing's happened, so we're fine, and we stop thinking about it and we stop reading the environment around us. Like avalanche is a good example of this, of like traveling over snowy terrain, and it's like there's never been an avalanche at this time of year before. It's like people just aren't thinking about it, but actually the avalanche goes off, and then it's like, oh yeah, there was wind from this direction, and there was unusual amount of snow, etc., etc. And suddenly, like, actually all of the signs were there in the environment, but that people fell into that trap and didn't read it.
Right. Yeah. Gavin de Becker wrote a book called The Gift of Fear, and he talks about trusting your gut is a big core message on there. Women have women's intuition, men have their gut feeling, right? But don't try to analyze why your gut feels a certain way. Trust the gut. Later, in a safe area, you can go and you can try and analyze why that is and do all of that. But they talk about people so often they find themselves in a violent encounter and they turn around afterwards and say, well, all the signs were there. Well, if all the signs were there to begin with, then some part of you should have been able to pick up on that. And more often than not, for me anyways, I find my gut is the first thing that picks up on something's not right. What's not right? I don't know, but I'm going to extract myself from this situation. We'll try and figure it out. Put my ego aside, because it's so easy to want to push on through and let that male ego get involved, right?
But do you think that goes back to that when we were talking about earlier about spending more time in like the outdoor environment and actually taking ownership? That actually that listening to that intuition or that gut feeling is important. Whereas if you haven't spent much time in those environments where you actually have to take ownership for yourself, that it's very easy to dismiss it and get into trouble.
I think so. I also think, just like you talk about this hippie, frou-frou type of stuff that's out there about energies and whatever it might be, I think there's so much in this world that we just don't truly understand. We're always learning new things. Science is always uncovering new things. If we do get these weird feelings, what's the worst that's going to happen if I act on this? Maybe I don't get a summit today. Maybe I don't go into this one location. I going into a pub and you see all the motorcycles outside and I don't know, it looks a little seedy, and you walk inside the front door and everyone stops and staring at you, right? I'm a big guy. I'm tough. I'm not going to turn around. Or maybe the gut says, yeah, maybe this isn't the place I want to be, and I can figure it out after. Whatever the situation somebody wants to relate to, whether that's in a city environment or an outdoor environment. But I think there's more to the world than we truly comprehend. And if it's not going to grossly hurt you or inconvenience you, what's the harm in listening to that gut?
Yeah, my theory on this is that, like, if you think about like the brain as an iceberg, And it's like the conscious part of our brain, so like our thoughts and things, are like the tip of the iceberg. There's only a tiny percentage of our brain functioning that is conscious, that we're even aware of. The rest of it is all underneath the water. It's the rest, the big bulk of the iceberg underneath the water. And our subconscious chooses the messages that it sends through to the conscious, again, to help keep us safe. And I believe that like the intuition and the gut feelings are like a partially formed image that the subconscious has picked up on, like, ooh, danger, and it's sent through like a partially formed image. It hasn't sent through the full details. And actually, then if you zone in and you're like, hang on a minute, it's like my brain's picked up on something. Like, let's get the conscious part now in, like, what is going on here. Then often you can then put the pieces together, because it is our natural habitat. It's like when you go out the door in the morning and it's like it's kind of blue sky, but you're just like, oh, I'll just take my rain jacket with me.
Right.
Half an hour later it's raining and you're just like, oh, that was a bit of like automatic response. But it's like, but your body, it's our environment is picked up on that, the messages, and you've acted. And it's, I think we really should listen to it more. But we teach young people, I don't know what it's like in Canada, but certainly here in the UK, it's like we teach young people to override their intuition, around people, like first meetings with, always treat people how you wish to be treated. It's like, well, no, listen to your intuition. If you get a bad vibe about somebody, like, listen to that.
I like that a lot. And I like that example of going outside and bringing a jacket. Maybe it smells different, but you didn't really pick up on that. Maybe the birds aren't making their normal sounds, but you didn't pick up on that. But there's all these things that are kind of going on. Maybe it just feels different against your skin.
Yeah.
But you're not picking up on it. But there's something deep down that tells you, maybe I should bring that jacket. And as kids, respect your elders, treat people as you want to be treated. No respect is earned. And if the elder is not earning respect, then you don't give it to them. And treating other people as you'd like to be treated, within reason, of course. You mentioned that anxiety feeling that you feel, and I think you touched your chest when you said that you feel internally. I'm curious, when you get that overloaded, overwhelmed with sort of that anxiety feeling, and you recognize that's happening, what steps do you take after that?
Yeah, so I don't always do this because I can be pretty stubborn, and it's like if I'm focused on something, but it's usually to my detriment. So I recognize it. I'll stop what I'm doing, and try to breathe. But what really helps me is just going out for a run, like earlier, because I was like having to make some pretty big decisions earlier today. And it's like I'd scheduled, like, for my run. I live in Snowdonia in North Wales, like in the mountains, and I'd scheduled my run in for later. But I was just like, actually, you know what? I'm going to go now because I need this. It's like if I sit here now, I know that, like, I'm going to have a physical response to this, and then my mind is going to start playing out these negative narratives which are not true. And I just need to go out and move. And it's just like, I went out and, like, literally within a couple of minutes it's like, oh, here we go, there's the solution. And it's like, it's magic. Like, so being outside and moving is my therapy.
I agree with that one. Yeah, going for a run, going for a walk, just being outside. I do this with my kids. I haven't had to do it in a long time, but when they're growing up and they're excited about something, I'll say, well, just sit down for a second. Okay. Do you hear, and I'd mention something. Do you hear the refrigerator? No. Okay, well, sit down and wait until you can hear it. Okay, I hear it now. Great. Do you hear cars outside? No. Okay, well, sit down and wait till you hear it. Do you hear the birds outside? No. Okay. And I'd use, and you can do it with any one of your senses, touch and smell and feel, but I'd always use the hearing part, because I found in order for me to hear these really quiet things, I have to stop and kind of be calm. And I find, and I found that to be a good approach with them. All of a sudden, they're now present. They're out of that environment where they're in their head and they're all worked up. And for me, I find that to be a good way to decompress. And so when I'm out for a run or I'm out for a walk or whatever it might be, I'm out hiking, I find the exercise is a very valuable thing for me, but unless I'm actually engaging, like, okay, do I actually smell the plants that are growing around me? Do I hear the birds? Do I hear the rustle of the squirrels or whatever it might be? I find I need to do that personally in order to really kind of be present.
Yeah, it's so true. Yeah, I love
it. Megan, I really appreciate you taking the time to be on the podcast. I really enjoy this conversation. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.